Take one set and pass them around. You should have 2 pages. While you're passing those around, let me ask you a question. Have you ever gotten to meet one of your heroes? I got to meet 2 of my heroes last week. Darren LaCroix, this guy, world champion of public speaking 2001. That's the highest level of the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. And that means he's the best of over 25,000 competitors worldwide. Craig Valentine, who wrote this book, one of the co-authors of this book, was the 1999 world champion of public speaking, and I got to meet him as well. I only got to spend 1 day with Craig and 2 days with Darren. They were some of the most amazing hours of my life. And these guys are my heroes, not because they won the competition, not because they're world champs. So that's cool, don't get me wrong, that's impressive. But they're my heroes because they're doing what I would love to be doing. That is, they go around the country, the United States, and the world, frankly. Darren's going to be up in Canada next week. They go around the world, and they make people better. They make people better speakers, better teachers, better presenters, better educators. They make people better, and I love to do that. And they have their own business. They can turn down work. They can work harder and try and make more money. They have control over their own lives. And they get to do this while doing something that I would love to be doing. Those guys have helped me to see the vision more clearly on where I want to go. So those guys are my heroes. I'm so excited about the things I was learning at that workshop that I got to tell you guys about it. But I don't have time to condense 2 whole days into the next 10 minutes, do I? So what I'm going to do, here's my deal for you. I'm going to give you about a dozen different tips. And you pick the 2 or 3 that mean the most to you. If I can give you 2 or 3 things that are going to make you a better speaker next time you get up here, would that be good?
Yes.
All right. I promised I'll do my end of the bargain. Take what I tell you and put it into your next speech. Think about how you're going to do that. This is all about storytelling, but it's all about speeches, really. Why is storytelling so important in public speaking? I'll answer that one for you. It is so important because that's what people are going to remember more than the points you make. They're going to remember the stories that go with the points. All the best speakers tell you, you make a point, you tell a story. You make a point, you tell a story. And that story is going to support the point. And that's what people remember. It's so important to tell good stories because that's how people are going to remember your points. This is a model of storytelling. It comes from Craig Valentine's information. He told us, when you go back, I want you to teach your clubs this information. So when it says, may not be duplicated, retransmitted, or produced without permission, he gave me permission, okay? He gave me permission. So, the 9 C's of storytelling. Let me give you the overview of what that's about. I'm not going to go into detail, and then I'm going to tell you the big takeaways that I got out of this that are relating to those 9 C's. So the first C is curiosity. You want to make sure that your audience is curious. They're paying attention. Especially at the beginning, you want to get their curiosity up. Venkat did a great job of this, and I asked you a question. Remember what I said? Have you ever met one of your heroes? I was tapping into your curiosity with a you question. I'll tell you what you questions are in a minute. So in a story, you want to tap that curiosity. Then you want to introduce the circumstance, which is really all about the setting, the environment. What's it like? Then you introduce characters as you need to. Who is the story about? And then there's a conflict. This is almost like a formula for a Hollywood production, isn't it? A Hollywood movie. That's what good stories are. They're little mini movies. There's a conflict, and the conflict builds and builds, and then suddenly there's a cure. And it releases all that tension that you've been building. And then you see the change that's been made. And there's that resolution. Finally, a great story will have this carry-out message. What was the point of that story summed up in one short little phrase that you can walk out the door and remember? It's got to be a short little phrase that you can remember, or you're not going to remember it. For each story, you want to have that little carry-out phrase. And then at the end, you want to call back to the beginning. Call back. Tie the end of your story to the beginning of your story. And it just seals things up so nicely. It makes a nice package. The final C is the conversations in dialogue. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But dialogue is the heart of your story. Okay? So those are the 9 C's. Let me go into a little bit of detail, but before I do, here's one of my huge takeaways. Okay? Your audience is going to remember what they saw in their heads, not what you said. Your audience is going to remember the pictures in their heads, not the words you said. Now the words that you say are going to put that picture there, but they may not remember it exactly the way that you see it. They're going to see their own pictures. Okay? And that is really important when you think about, how am I going to tell this story? You want to make sure you're putting the right picture in there. You want to make it a full picture that they can remember. So how do we do that? In the curiosity, one of the things you want to do is ask a you question. Ask a question about you. When have you ever seen? Do you remember a time when you? Have you ever thought of? It's a you question. Why is it a you question? Because then, instead of me telling a story that the audience member is not in the story, I get to put them in their own story. They can be in the story. Okay? They're in the moment. They're with you. So ask that you question to get their curiosity up. So for circumstance and for characters, it is so important that you build that picture properly. What does it look like in the room that you're talking about, or in the setting that you're in? Okay? You want to know the visual, the audio, the kinesthetic, which is what does it feel like, and smell. Smell is the most important when you're talking about memories. That is the strongest memory-inducing of our senses, memory-inducing sense. So try to include some of those things when you're describing something. If it's a ball field, let's say, it was a dusty ball field. I could smell the hot dogs cooking in the background and the freshly cut grass under my feet. I could see the sun through the trees in the distance as it was setting. You know, I'm building the picture in your mind now, right? You're starting to go there with me, and the more I describe it, the more you're there with me. You don't have to go into too much detail, but you want to set the picture in people's minds so that they remember. And then when the characters come in, you want to tell me 2 things about that character. What do they look like? And what do they act like? And then I can get that picture in my head. She was a 6'3", blonde-haired Amazon woman who never took no for an answer. Okay, you got a picture of what that woman looks like in your head right now, don't you? And now I can deal with her. When Venkat told the story about his teacher, I was struggling. What does his teacher look like? Is she this tall? Is she this tall? Is she big? Is she scary? If he had said, she is 5 foot nothing, but nobody would ever mess with that woman. Carried a whip everywhere she went. Okay, now I got a picture in my head of what this woman looks like. Okay? That's the power of telling the story the right way. It puts that picture in people's mind, and they can fill in the details. The conflict should always be building and building as you go through your story. And the pressure should be building. And then suddenly, a guru comes along with a cure. The guru should not be you. When you're telling a story, the guru of your story who hands you the cure is not you yourself. Now, this brought me to a little bit of a paradox, a problem, because the story I was working on in the workshop, I was my own guru. I suddenly, after 2 years, came to the realization that I wasn't as good a public speaker as I thought I was, and I needed to improve. So in the story that I tell, I use what is known as an emotional truth. The emotional truth is that my daughter was with me, and she probably realized that I really wasn't as good as I thought I was, and she was probably thinking, Dad, you're not as good as you think you are. So in my story that I'm going to tell, I'm going to have her tell me that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. She didn't actually say those words, but it's okay, because if I tell the story the way it really happened, there are some details in there that just confuse people, and they're really not important. The point of the story was, you can't just sit back on your laurels and believe that you're as good as you think you are and not try to improve, because you're probably not as good as you think you are. Okay, so sometimes the emotional truth is what we capture and keep in the story. Now you may not like that, and sometimes you have to be careful of how far you stretch it. Don't stretch it any farther than you feel comfortable with. But sometimes the true details get in the way of making a point. So you really don't want that to happen. I talked about conversation and dialogue being the heart of your story. Okay, imagine I'm telling a story and I want to go back to the grocery store because the cute girl is working there and this is her last day. So I come home and I went to my house and I told my mother that I needed to go to the grocery store. And my mother looked at me strangely and said to me that I really didn't need to go because she had just gone the day before. Okay, now compare that to this. I went home, I saw my mom. Mom, I need to go to the grocery store. She looked at me. You want to know if you need to go to the store for? Well, I just went yesterday and the fridge is full. You see the difference? You see the difference? You can see the story so much clearer when I'm doing the dialogue, when it's dialogue. Whenever you have the chance, two people talking to each other, act it out. Be one person and then be the next person. That puts the picture in people's minds. They can see the emotion, they can connect so much better. The final thing, when you walk out, I said you want to have that carry-out statement. It should be 10 words or less, and it should sum up what the speech is all about. Darren LaCroix's championship-winning speech, his was fall forward. Craig Valentine has one, your dreams are not for sale. Your dreams are not for sale. Talks about how he was going to sell out, but he wasn't fulfilling his dream. And he said, no, my dream is not for sale. It's a little snippet that captures the story. It should be rhythmic, it should be alliterative if it can be, like fall forward, has that same sound. You want to have that because that helps you to be focused, and it helps your audience to walk out and remember what was that about. So if you can just use a few of the things that I've mentioned here today, painting that picture for your audience, helping them to see what you're talking about. What is that story all about, and how does it look, and what does it smell like, and how does it feel? Then they'll remember the story, and they'll get your point so much better. You'll connect with your audience, and you'll be more powerful as a public speaker. And I know you all have great stories to tell, so just include a few of those things, and keep going, and keep building, and become better and better every day. Thanks.